Hello, everyone. Welcome to a session of Data Science and Artificial Intelligence in Africa. Today, we have Ekow Duker from Zindi Africa and Ekow Analytics. Thank you for your time and welcome, Ekow.
Sure, thank you very much.
So, first of all, confirm I said your name correctly. I might be butchering your name and you just be taking it silently.
No, I think you did fine. It's Ekow. It's the name from Ghana.
Okay. So thank you so much. May you please give us a short introduction about who you are, where you're from, and we can start with that. Who you are and where you're from.
Sure, thank you very much. So my name is Ekow Duker. I'm one of the co-founders of Zindi. Most of my working life, so I started my working life as an oil field engineer. I worked across the African continent. So I lived in the deserts for a few years, which was quite interesting. Then at some point, I went back to school to do an MBA, then moved to South Africa, where I worked for a couple of the major banks. And then I started Zindi with my co-founders some 3.5 years ago.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. You said you're from which country? I didn't get that part. My network wasn't a bit unstable.
From Ghana.
From Ghana. Oh, wow. So you're the second Ghanaian. You're the second Ghanaian I've interviewed. The first one was Don from... He's an ambassador for Zindi Africa in Ghana, and he's the founder of Ghana.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, It's really nice. Thank you. So can you tell us a bit about what you studied, like your background, and how you got into maybe the work that you're doing now?
Okay, that's interesting. My first degree was in civil engineering. My second degree was in mechanical engineering. So I've always had a leaning towards engineering and mathematics. And as I mentioned, I then went on to study an MBA, which then took me into the corporate world in South Africa. So, but how I got into analytics was when I was working for ABSA/Barclays. And at some point, I got the opportunity to head up the analytics function for the retail and business bank, which was some 8 years ago.
Okay, thank you. In terms of your education, right? So you studied engineering and then you did an MBA. Did you go on further to do a PhD, or you just stopped there and continued with your work?
Oh, I stopped there. I didn't have the appetite for a PhD, so I didn't do a PhD. Okay,
that's great. That's wonderful. I think it's also good to hear because, with a lot of applications in data science, you see, we want someone with a PhD. So I think it's great to see someone who has an MBA and you're doing something in data analytics related to data science, and you also started Zindi, which has a lot of stuff in AI in data science as well. So can you tell us more about Zindi? What is it that you do at Zindi? What is Zindi about? And how did you get to starting Zindi?
Right, so Zindi is a professional network for data scientists. As I said, we started some 3 years ago. So we launched in September 2018. So we had started building some months before. What led to us starting Zindi was the recognition that, especially in Africa, data scientists didn't seem to have a platform to showcase their skills. So in working with organizations, we noticed that their default stance was to look outside the continent for data science skills, which we felt was wrong and unnecessary. So So Zindi was started really to be this place where data scientists can learn, able to collaborate and showcase their skills. And we felt it was something which was lacking. And I think that the response to Zindi has validated the suspicion we had that more could be done to support the African data scientists.
Okay. Thank you for that. It was definitely needed. And it's always hard to scale up such an idea. So did you have like a great team of people working with you when you started, or it was just like few people who were interested in the idea?
Well, the Zindi team is still very small. I think at the moment we're around 10 or 12 people. When we started, we were 3, maybe 4. So it's always been a very small team. Is it a great team? I think it is a great team. So we have a bunch of people in South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria who don't necessarily think too much of themselves, which I mean in a good way. So there's a level of humility and curiosity, and also tenacity and a strong belief in the mission. So I think that makes for a great team.
You definitely have a great team, because in this field, you definitely need some of the aspects that you talked about, like humility. And also, I guess the other thing that you need is like just being passionate about it and willing to like do some research about it. So I think you definitely have a great team, because the Zindi community keeps growing. So can you also tell us about the Ekow Analytics? What is it about? What do you do there?
Oh, I don't work at Ekow now. So it was a data science consultancy, which I joined after leaving the bank. But I don't.
Okay.
I don't work at Ekow now. So what it did was that it did it essentially did data science consulting work for large clients.
Okay. That's great. Well, I wanted to ask more questions, but considering you no longer work there, so maybe I could just skip that part. So what skills do you have in terms of analytics and in data science, in terms of like the software that you use, and I guess in terms of the software that you use and maybe programming languages?
Okay. So that's an interesting question. What skills do I have? I think in data science, one always feels that you don't have enough skills. Yes. And certainly the others in the team are certainly more competent than me when it comes to data science. So I dabble a bit in Python. And I used to do some work in R. And then when I began to get interested in deep learning models, I realized that most of the literature was leading me towards Python. So that's when I made the switch. And so when I do data science work, which isn't all that often, then I tend to work in Python.
Okay. That's cool. Most people I know work in Python. It was only recently in my previous work, because I was doing a research internship, that I used R a lot. And previously I thought I knew how to use R, but now when I was working on that project, I was like, I know nothing. But the experience was quite interesting. It was good for me because I learned a lot. And now I can say I'm almost as good in R as I am with Python, which was a great thing for me. But they're also similar in something. So it's not really difficult to learn either of the two if you know the other one. So what are your top like interesting projects that you've worked on in data science?
So the most recent project I worked on, which was really out of curiosity more than anything else, it was just to explore categorical embeddings, which is where a categorical variable can be expressed as a vector, and trying to pick up the latent features in a data set. So I worked on it was a data set from Goodreads, which had a list of authors and the ratings that they had received for their work. And I tried to see if there were any associations that the deep learning model could pick up in terms of their country of birth. So there was some quite interesting, so the model seemed to pick up some quite interesting associations and also some rather surprising ones. So that was the most recent data science project that I worked on. So like I said, it was driven more by curiosity than anything else.
Which is a good thing, I think, because when you're curious about something, you want to create a solution to a problem. So I guess that is a really good thing. So what were some of the interesting associations that you found out from this project?
So the one I remember was that, so in visualizing the countries of birth of a bunch of authors, what the model did was to plot the countries in 2D space, so you can see which ones in terms of, so when looked at through the lens of how the Goodreads readership responded to authors from those countries, it clustered countries that were similar, and it clustered them together. So, for example, what I noticed was that, for example, North Korea was very close to Libya, which might be related to the fact that both have had or both have a totalitarian leader, and some would say a rather repressive political system. So that might be what the readers of Goodreads were responding to through the work of the authors from those countries.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you can also draw maybe various conclusions from the associations, I guess. So you look into what you know about the countries, maybe the similarities, just like you did. So I guess that was a very interesting project. I'm looking at your artwork there. It says "Make art, not war," and I like it. It's a really cool.
Oh, right. Yeah, thank you. Right. Yeah. So that's from Vietnam.
Oh, really?
I traveled to Vietnam some years ago. So that's Vietnam War era propaganda poster.
Okay.
So I bought a few of them and brought them back home.
It's pretty cool. It's really cool. Do you get to travel a lot because of your work with Zindi or with data science in general?
No, and I used to, but I guess with the COVID, I haven't traveled much over the past 2 years.
Okay, that's great. So I also wanted to know about what you think about the state of data science and the applications being used for data science in Africa. How do you see the current maybe work that you know is been happening, and where do you see it going?
That's a good question. My personal opinion is that there's a lot more that can be done for the data scientists themselves and also for the companies who hire them or need work done. So I'll start with the companies. I find that most organizations are still very early in your data science journey. Most will not really have a good understanding of what data science is. They may have been taken in by the hype, or they may have had a bad experience. But I find that very few companies, organizations have a sober and informed understanding of what data science is. So that's then fertile ground for lots of mishaps to happen. And we do come across these from time to time. On the data scientist side, I also think that while there are some data scientists who are really good and they're curious and they approach problems like a scientist would, I also find that perhaps there are perhaps too many people who call themselves data scientists who aren't really.
Yes, that's
so they can pull down a package or two from the shelf and write a few lines of code. But that's, to my mind, I think that the field of data science has a lot more to offer. And I feel that both sides are perhaps not exploiting that or delving deeper into it to the extent that they could. But yeah, there's a lot of promising work. And I'm always reassured when I read or hear about somebody who's doing exciting work. So there's a lot of that. And I think that as the industry as a whole matures, perhaps the conversations and the approaches will also be more considered. And that will be a lot less hype.
Okay. How would you define data science, or what do you think a data scientist should be doing? Because it seems to have a lot of different definitions. So I guess that's why some people will think they're data scientists just because they can plot a graph, write a few lines of code.
Yeah. So a definition is always hard. I think to what we hire for when we hire data scientists, I think high on the list would be curiosity. So having that curiosity to explore, having a certain level of quantitative ability. Sure, it helps to have the technical skills and to be familiar with certain platforms and approaches and methods. That's always good to have. But I think fundamentally, because the work of a scientist is generally to explore and to try things out that you don't know will succeed or not. For me, that is one of the attributes that I think is probably the most important.
So I guess maybe that could be useful maybe to some people who are looking to get into the field. So for them to be able to be, maybe for people to understand that they are data scientists, maybe they could look at some of the things that you said, and then they can say, well, if I get to a certain stage where I can say I can do a little bit of some of these things, then I guess I could say I'm a data scientist. Is it correct to say that?
Well, I'm not even sure that you want to call yourself a data scientist. I think that the data science skill set is a useful skill set to have. So you could be a pharmacist, and if you have data science skills, I would argue that it could make your work as a pharmacist more effective. Or if you're a researcher, you wouldn't necessarily need to make that 180-degree turn and become a data scientist, but rather to bolt on the data science skills, the mindset, the tools, the platforms, and use that to make your work as a researcher more effective. So you could be a linguist, you could be a researcher in medicine or law. There's still a place for data science to help you in certain aspects of your work.
So my last question is, what advice would you give to anyone who wants to start their own data science platform and do similar things to what you're doing?
Right. My advice would be not to give up. because it's hard.
Yeah.
I think you're working in a field which is immature. So many people won't understand what you do. So my advice would be to stick it out and not to give up.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.